Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We have the panelists here and we have a very distinguished audience and also a couple of panelists online. And we have panelists from across the world. And thank you all very much for being here today. And I would hand over the mic to Dr. Benno Boyer, today's chair, to give his welcome address and start the proceedings. Dr. Benno, please.
Thank you very much, Arnab. Good morning, everybody. So I'm very happy that you are all here. We are a small group, but hopefully a powerful group. In the room, we are like, I guess, about 15 people, and then we have another 25 or so online. So very welcome. Good morning to everybody. And on behalf of UNESCO and on behalf of the Maritime Research Center, Dr. Arnab Das, because we jointly co-organized this meeting here today. Before I start talking, I would like to hand out some goodies to all of you. So, Madam, if you could be so kind and share them around there. And for those online, please, we have the Pockets of Hope. And we can also share that with all of you electronically so that you all have copies available. I have another gift for a special guest, for Abhinash Mohanty. I just learned about IPE Global. I didn't know the organization. Forgive my lack of knowledge, but you are the sector head working with climate change and sustainability. So I've got a very special gift for you.
Okay.
If you could please take that.
Thank you.
This is a climate science. This is a poster series on climate science literacy that we have co-produced with UNESCO, ILO, IOM, UNDP, UNDRR, UNEP, UNESCAP, UNFCCC, UNICEF, and the United Nations Office for South-South Cooperation. 10 agencies. I'm sure that you like it.
Thank you.
It's also available electronically. 27 posters. We have 7 explanatory posters, and we have 1 poster that relates to each one of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. This is also something that Mr. Bharat from the Indian Man and Biosphere National Commission and Maritime Research Center and UNESCO, possibly with UNDP and IUCN, we can also celebrate a number of days next year with each other. Not only today, the first International Day for Biosphere Reserves, but perhaps next year, the World Water Day or the World Environment Day on the 5th of June. The World Water Day is 22nd of March. Or the International Day of Clean Air for Blue Skies on the 7th of September.
Oh.
Oceans, of course, as well. So there's a lot of room for us to cooperate with each other. Yes, welcome again. I just want to talk a tiny little bit about UNESCO, for those of you who are not that familiar with what UNESCO is. UNESCO is one of the oldest specialist agencies, organizations of the United Nations system. It has been established in 1945 as a result of the tragic, sad, traumatic, I can't find a word for it, for the aftermath of the First and the Second World War and all the tragedy that has caused by it. It was decided that bilateral agreements between countries don't do the job to keep peace, because every United Nations agency is about keeping peace, promoting peace, advocating peace. So UNESCO was formed to advocate for peace on the platforms of education, culture, and science, to bring people of different ethnic backgrounds, religions, nationalities, ethnicities, etc., together and do something that we are doing here today. So in UNESCO, we have now 5 major programs. We have one program on education. We have another one on the natural science. Here today we are present with 3 people from the natural science sector of the UNESCO New Delhi office. My colleague, Dr. Neha Mita, and our new colleague, Mr. Ayush, over there, and myself. But we also have colleagues from the UNESCO office in Addis Ababa online in Ethiopia. I'll come to that in a minute. So we also have a sector on social and human sciences, and a sector on culture, of course. That's perhaps our most famous sector because it hosts the World Heritage Convention, like famous Taj Mahal or pyramids or other famous landmarks. And finally, of course, we also have a sector on communication information. So it's a very, very broad mandate, not very easy to handle that at times. But the UNDP has a mandate which is just as broad as the one from UNESCO, I guess. Biosphere reserves were first talked about in 1968. And I think it was the Stockholm Conference, which was the precursor for the Millennium Development Goals, which was the precursor for the Sustainable Development Goals. And it was warned by UNESCO against the unbridled exploitation of natural resources. At that time, we were just a little bit more than 3 billion people on the planet. Now we have exceeded 8. We are gearing up to reach 10.9, probably by the year 2050. I'm not sure which year has been predicted by UNDESA. But that also means that our planet is not growing. It means that we need to be much more careful with the distribution of the goods that comes from environmental services and from natural resources. So biosphere reserves have been then established as the first United Nations designated site system from the 5 systems that we have. We have the Biosphere Reserves from 1971, World Heritage Convention from 1972, and the Global Geoparks from all under UNESCO, but we also have the Ramsar Convention for wetlands. And we have from the Food and Agricultural Organization, the globally important agricultural heritage sites. So those are the 5 United Nations designated site systems. Today, of course, we talk about biosphere reserves, but they also work in tandem with the others. Biosphere reserves in a nutshell. Please have a look at this brochure that we produced. They are about relearning how to live in harmony with people and nature, because our life depends on nature. Human survivability depends on nature. The human life support system depends on nature. We will hear more about biosphere reserves today, so I'll stop talking about them now. In terms of prospects for the work, because we don't just want to have this workshop to celebrate the International Day, the first International Day for Biosphere Reserves. We also want to do the action together with you and many others in the future to actually not only write reports and talk, but we really want to generate positive changes, tangible changes, intangible changes, and changes in human behavior. We need that. All of us, we have to learn again how to live in harmony with nature. But that does not mean to go back. It means to go forward and apply solutions that we have. We have many, many solutions available to solve environmental aspects, socio-ecological aspects. For some aspects, we do not have the solutions, but we need to mobilize universities to study that. For example, we talked about that over breakfast earlier. Plastic pollution, the microplastic and the nanoplastic, which has intruded the human digestive and respectively the human blood system, nanoplastics. We don't have the solutions for that. A special welcome for our guests from Addis Ababa, from Ethiopia. We have decided between the UNESCO New Delhi cluster office that serves India, Bangladesh, Bhutan, the Maldives, Nepal, and Sri Lanka, and the UNESCO liaison office that liaises with the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa and the African Union Commission, so basically liaises with all of the 55 African countries, UNESCO Liaison Office in Addis Ababa. We have decided to have this event as a start for a South-South cooperation, initially with the giant India, which is set to have the largest population of any one country in the world from next year onwards. And Ethiopia, of course, is also a giant. It's 1.1 square kilometer in size in comparison to India, which is 3.3. But it's also very large, and it has also the second largest population from any of the African countries. Ethiopia has about 110 to 115 million people. So very warm welcome to the colleagues from Addis Ababa. That's the words that I have to say for you before I hand back to you, but I also want to read out a message from our Director General, from Madame Audrey Azoulay, Director General of UNESCO, on the occasion of the International Day for Biosphere Reserves, 3rd of November 2022, which we celebrate today for the first time. And I quote, "For more than half a century, UNESCO's Man and the Biosphere program has led a global quest to rethink the ties between people and planet. The logic is simple: to improve our relationship with nature, we must first improve our understanding of how we affect the living world that sustains us, and vice versa. Every day, this quest plays out in 738 sites, biosphere reserves, 738 sites across 134 countries around the world network of biosphere reserves. Biosphere reserves are not conventional protected areas. They are places where 276 million people live and work. These sites exist wherever people interact with nature. From city to savanna, from mountaintop to mangrove, they range in size from a single small island community to vast ecological corridors stretching across continents. Every day in these biosphere reserves, people reset and reinvent their relationship with the environment in tangible ways by considering biodiversity conservation and sustainable development as compatible, mutually dependent goals. To recognize the important role biosphere reserves play for all humanity, UNESCO is proud to celebrate the first ever International Day for Biosphere Reserves on 3rd of November. On this day, we celebrate the diversity of these sites, their resilience, the knowledge they generate, and the example they set. For instance, through their support for the green economy, of their use of the renewable energy sources. On this day, we celebrate the potential of biosphere reserves to tackle the great challenge of our time, making peace with the natural world. For this, biosphere reserves have so much to offer. The rapid growth of the world network, with new sites being added every year, testifies to the growing awareness that our future depends upon reconciling our lifestyles with greater respect for nature. The potential of these biosphere reserves is driven by young people in particular, many of whom participate in the global Man and Biosphere Youth Network. These sites are also home to many indigenous people who have essential understanding and knowledge of the earth. To those of you that have not yet visited a biosphere reserve, I invite you to do so. You are sure to experience places that are truly remarkable, not only because they are home to natural wonders, but also because they are home to extraordinary people. I wish you all a happy first International Day for Biosphere Reserves. End of quote. This is the message from Madame Audrey Azoulay. And of course, at UNESCO, this is one of our flagship programs. We're very proud of that, and we are very, very happy that you are here with us today. On prospects, just a few words. Once we are getting together, this is also a start for reinvigorating a stronger collaboration here in India with IUCN and UNDP and UNEP and other UN agencies, and of course with the Indian Man and the Biosphere National Committee and the Maritime Research Center. With the Maritime Research Center, we have a discussion ongoing to establish a center of excellence on on coastal, marine, and riverine biosphere reserves, and perhaps also terrestrial biosphere reserves in India, and also in support of the riparian countries around, let's say, the Indian Ocean or so. Not really a fully defined geographical area, but with a reach out, together with Dr. Arnab Das here. We had developed 3 OPEDs today, which have been published. So the Hindu has brought an OPED today, which was co-written by Neha and myself, together with the former director of the Division of Ecological and Earth Science, Dr. Miguel Kluisendergott, who also was the secretary of the Man and Biosphere Reserve, and supported by the Austrian Man and Biosphere National Committee. So that was published in the Hindu. We also had 2 articles published in Bangladesh. And later today, we will see if we also have something in Bhutan and in Nepal. Yeah, so mountain biosphere reserves are at our heart. Bhutan does not yet have a biosphere reserve, neither has Nepal, but we are working on that together with the governments. And maybe countries like Switzerland and maybe southern part of Germany and maybe Austria can be very helpful exchanging information. But also the Sundarbans, the lowlands between Bangladesh and India, of course, are at our heart. Sundarbans are already a biosphere reserve on the Indian side, and they are a World Heritage Site on the Bangladeshi side. But World Heritage Sites and biosphere reserves are something different. They are complementing each other. But biosphere reserves in the management plan have people and nature conservation together at their heart. We also have a discussion to carry out, hopefully together with you and hopefully also together with the support of the Maritime Research Center, to carry out the potentiality analysis of biosphere reserves in the northeast of India, in the Seven Sisters and plus Sikkim. And we don't want to do that alone. We really want, in particular, IUCN and UNDP and United Nations Environment Programme and maybe some other agencies to assist, and embassies and private sector. So I'll stop here, because unfortunately you have to listen to me again at the end of this event today. But I hope this was a setting for everybody to be reminded what UNESCO is, what UNESCO stands for. And I'm very enthusiastic about biosphere reserves. Neha heard me saying this many times, that they are the reason why I joined UNESCO after I've been working as a global researcher. So very welcome again, and I hand back to Dr. Anna. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Benno. And indeed, I mean, it was a good introduction and setting the tone in the right manner. And I thank you for that. And I also thank you for partnering us for such an important event. And as you also mentioned, we are in an ongoing discussion on various aspects where we can work together and contribute. Next, I would request Dr. Rita Biswanath. She is the director at the UNESCO Liaison Office in Addis Ababa with the African Union and UNECA. Ma'am, I would request you to make your presentation, and also I would request you to talk about yourself. I mean, I thought it's best that the speaker introduces herself or himself. So I would request you to first say a few words about your journey or what you would like to tell us about yourself. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. Good morning to all colleagues. Good morning to all distinguished guests. My name is Dr. Rita Biswanath. I am the director of the UNESCO Liaison Office to the African Union, as Dr. Boer just said, to the African Union, to the United Nations Economic Commission of Africa, and to Ethiopia. And I'm also the representative to Ethiopia. So I have just joined UNESCO like 3 months ago. It has been. So I am very, very honored to be here. To join this meeting, especially to have the South-South cooperation. I think it is so important to have the South-South cooperation, which we very often forget. So allow me to wish you all a first happy International Day for Biosphere Reserves. I think this is very exciting because we know that biospheres are the heart, or we can say the lungs, of the ecosystem of sustainable development. I'm very, very happy to be here. So I would just like maybe to talk about the biospheres that we have in Ethiopia. I am based in Ethiopia. It is the liaison office, which is based in Ethiopia, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. As you know, the African Union Commission is based in Addis Ababa, as is the United Nations Economic Commission of Africa. So I think it is very opportune for us to be here, to be with you today on this great day, to be with the colleagues in New Delhi. So allow me to start. So I just want to talk a little bit about Ethiopia. Ethiopia is gifted with massive biological resources and is listed as one of the biodiversity hotspots in the world. The Secretariat on the Convention on Biological Diversity reported that Ethiopia possesses as much as 6,000 species of plants, of which 10% are endemic. And because of its climate, because of the geological aspect, the country has a diverse range of environments, from human forests and large marshes to the deserts of the Afar Depression. I just want maybe just to say, I am right now in Addis Ababa, and it is always very, very cold. It is 2,500 meters, which often many people do not know. And it is, I mean, the average temperature is always right now, it's 13 degrees outside, and the temperature is always around 17 degrees. Ethiopia is one of the world's 12 recognized ancient countries for crop plant diversities and contains a significant reserve of crop genetic diversity, with 11 cultivated crops having a diversity center in the country. And the households, of course, in Ethiopia rely on this natural capital that the ecosystems provide. However, as we know, as in many countries around the world, Ethiopia has also lost a big amount of primary forest. And today, the country has lost 18% of its total tree cover lost in the period between 2002 to 2021. As we move within the last decade of the Agenda 2030 Sustainable Development Goals, it is important that we act together to implement innovative and multi-sectoral and multidisciplinary solutions to environmental sustainability and prosperity, not only in Ethiopia, but in the different countries around the world. And these proactive solutions benefit a framework of mutually reinforcing contributions from the UN family around the world, the NGOs, the donor community, the academic and research institutions. Ladies and gentlemen, our programs at UNESCO, our science programs at UNESCO, are designed to provide solutions to the whole world's development challenges, especially in the world of biodiversity. Our MAP programs, as Dr. Benno just mentioned, helps to establish a scientific basis for enhancing the relationship between people and the environments. And by combining natural and social sciences, our program aims to improve human livelihoods and safeguard natural and managed ecosystems, thus promoting innovative approaches to economic development that are both socially and culturally appropriate and environmentally sustainable. Our program, our MAP program, supports member states in the nomination of Biosphere Reserve sites, which enable the testing of interdisciplinary approaches to the understanding and managing changes and interactions between the social and ecological systems, including conflict prevention and management of biodiversity. The World Network of Biosphere Reserves consists of a dynamic and interactive network sites of excellence. It fosters the harmonious integration of people and nature for sustainable development through participatory dialogue, which is why we're here, knowledge sharing, poverty reduction, and well-being human improvements, as well as respect for cultural values. As you know, culture is very, very dear in our hearts at UNESCO. And of course, contributing to the 2030 agenda of the Sustainable Development. I just want to add that in Africa, we have 90 biosphere reserves in 33 countries, and in Ethiopia, we have 5 biosphere reserves. And of course, biosphere reserves have a great transformative potential in our 2030 agenda, because it contributes to climate resilience via mitigation, as well as adaptation under the 2015 Paris Agreement. So, I mean, I do not need to further emphasize that the climate stability capacity of biosphere reserves is envisaged through a diversity of vegetation, which can contribute to increased carbon sequestration, leading to a neutrality and stabilization of temperature within the 1.5 to 2 degrees Celsius, which has been agreed across the international community. I think that if we harness significant transformative livelihood opportunities through elevated tourism and direct incomes to the in-situ communities, we will have done our work. So I think that as we mark this International Day, it is important for me to reiterate that a biosphere reserve is a sustainable development approach to modern life. And we know that biosphere reserves are very often fragile, and we need to harness their full potential in driving our national development priorities. And as such, as us in our liaison office, we want to promote green skill development, education for sustainable development by mainstreaming climate change, biodiversity, and environment in curriculum development. We want to establish baselines on biodiversity-related food security, value chain products, livelihood strategies, including the analysis of supply and demand perspectives of ecosystems within the existing biosphere reserves. I will not go into too much detail because I know we have a very, very long program. But dear distinguished guests, it is clear that the path to transformative and inclusive environmental management and socio-economic development requires unprecedented collaboration among governments, industry, academia, civil society, and of course, the international partners. The Sustainable Development Goal 17 of the UN Agenda 2030, as well as the African Union Agenda 2063, which you might have heard of, all recognize the importance of partnerships and collaborative governance in achieving sustainable development. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, let us make this journey together. Let us promote UNESCO's biospheres as models for sustainability in driving socio-economic transformation in Ethiopia, in Africa, and around the world. And so that we build a future where no one is left behind and where opportunities have no boundaries. Thank you very much for your attention, and have a great meeting and have a great day. Thank you.
Dr. Rita Besunaut, the director of the UNESCO office in Addis Ababa. And Addis Ababa is, of course, also the capital of Africa. So thank you very much, Rita. Very much appreciated. Just as a very small reminder why we do this South-South cooperation, and thank you so much, colleagues from UNESCO Addis Ababa. India is a strong house in Asia. Ethiopia is a strong house in Africa. And these two countries can learn from each other and with each other. And then step by step, of course, we can also open up to many other countries to join this South-South cooperation. As an example, the office of Dr. Rita, they have carried out potentiality analysis of biosphere reserves in Ethiopia, very professionally done. This is also something that we can do later. Maybe not for the whole of India, because India is so large, it would be very difficult to do it for the whole of India, but we could start for the Seven Sisters. starting with 8 states in the Northeast, together with the National Committee for Biosphere Reserves in India. Ethiopia has also developed a multimedia feature for one of their biosphere reserves, for the Lake Tana, which is one of Africa's Great Lakes. A multimedia feature, which we are aiming to feature in one of Africa's largest airlines, Ethiopian Airlines, which will be our partner. They've been our partner already before. So airlines can also come in, private sector can come in, partner with us. The multimedia feature of the Lake Tana Biosphere Reserve, we want to feature it in the in-flight entertainment program of Ethiopian Airlines. So that passengers can also, rather than being bored the whole flight, that they can see something really interesting, something that they don't yet know, and something that will inspire them to participate and also to adjust their own behavior. In India, on the other hand, we have a very strong relationship developed very young with the Indian Man and the Biosphere National Committee. India is also braced to establish 2 more biosphere reserves, and then more after that. So in India, we have, of course, developed the Pockets of Hope, a very nicely done illustrative magazine dealing with biosphere reserves. And we are actually encouraging all the 55 UNESCO field offices in the world to do something very similar. And we will do the one for Ethiopia jointly between India and Ethiopia. So Rita, we will develop something like this together, and the potentiality analysis for the Northeast India, we would need your help. So it really goes hand in hand. The countries really can benefit from each other. Again, I've already talked too much again. Anna, you are now giving introductory remarks in support of coastal and marine biosphere reserve management. Dr. Arnab Das is the founder and director of the Maritime Research Center in Pune, India.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. And as you know, Maritime Research Center, under the Foundation for Underwater Domain Awareness, is very, very focused on the underwater domain awareness framework for safe, secure, sustainable growth for all in the Indo-Pacific region. I'm using this word Indo-Pacific region with a specific purpose because we bring unique contribution to the tropical conditions. As you all know, tropical conditions are very, very unique. And many of the solutions which are pushed or driven by the West do not apply to our conditions. And particularly when I say underwater, it's a very, very important aspect which cannot be ignored. And of course, I am putting the word digital ocean. Today, in the present era, in the modern world, digital will have tremendous advantages. We can use all the tools that are available if we have everything available in the digital framework. So I think that's a very, very important aspect. And we at the Maritime Research Center are very, very focused on the underwater domain awareness. And when I say use the word framework, we are talking about policy intervention, technology intervention, and acoustic capacity and capability building. And all of them have to go hand in hand. Many times we are not able to keep a balance. I mean, I'm using the word balance because everything has to go together. Otherwise, the resource utilization itself, I mean, we will always have limited resources. Let's be aware of that. And if we can't optimize the resource utilization, and as Dr. Rita also mentioned, and Benno has been talking very, very repeatedly, cooperation becomes very, very important. And this framework that you can see on this slide, it actually brings a structured model for pooling of resources and synergizing of effort. I will dwell upon this going forward. Next, please.
Right.
Sometimes it takes, yeah. So I'll try and cover under some of these heads, and I'm putting Indian Ocean because let's also know what are the uniqueness of the Indian Ocean, the tropical waters. We'll talk about the underwater domain awareness framework, the coastal communities and their livelihood issues, challenges and opportunities, and let's also see some of the way ahead. I'm very clear that the way ahead is not simple. It can't be put across in a presentation of 10-15 minutes. There's much more to be done, a lot of collaboration, a lot of partnerships to be looked at. Now, in the 21st century, the new global order, as we say, most of the interactions, I mean, in the last century, it was the Atlantic, right? Today, in the 21st century, the larger strategic interactions are happening in the tropical waters. More and more players, even extra-regional powers, are maintaining their strategic presence in the tropical waters. And if you look at it deeper, there is a very unique perspective, or even the challenges and opportunities as we talk about, right from political to economic to physical, because as I said about the tropical conditions, I mean, when you look at anything that if you have to see under below the water requires a sonar or an acoustic means. Being from the Navy, I can tell you when you check a sonar in the temperate waters, I mean, the Greenland, Iceland, UK gap was the prime theater of operations in the Cold War period. And when the actual underwater technology development happened, a sonar there would give you 32 nautical miles as a detection range. The same sonar, you bring it to the tropical waters here, the range comes down to 6 nautical miles. Now, whether you are using it for a naval purpose, whether you are using it for monitoring marine mammals, or whether you are using it for blue economic purposes, deep sea mining, deep surveys for oil and gas, what will you achieve if the performance degradation is of the order of 70%? Even for conservation. So unless we build, all of us come together to build capacity, I don't think we're going to achieve much. Now, when you talk about the Indian Ocean, as Dr. Benno also mentioned, the position of India is very, very unique. And I think the Indian leadership is also very, very sensitive about its geographical position, geopolitical position. So already the Prime Minister has talked about the Sagar vision. It's about security and growth. And the Government of India is committed to the sustainable growth that everybody is looking for. So definitely India is well placed to take the leadership role, and there's a lot happening at the government level. I am not a representative to talk about that. I'm here to say what this UDA can do and how it can contribute. Now, I'm putting the slide up front. I mean, when we talk about, today I'm speaking at the first International Day for Biosphere Reserves. If you look at this map, this is a tool. This is that digital ocean or digital framework that I'm talking about. This is the automated identification system data. The entire shipping data is available. The way you have Google Maps, the entire shipping data is available in this AIS system. So the shipping data has been captured real time online from that system, and we have converted this into the underwater noise. So you can see a spatio-temporal map of underwater noise. So when we talk about biosphere reserves, we can use a similar tool. This is the digital tool that we are talking about. We have built these capabilities. This tool can actually tell you what intervention is possible. A straightforward thing. And when I'm saying pooling of resources, when we do capacity building, the same work should be relevant to multiple stakeholders so that everybody can pool in their resources for capacity building. Now look at this tool. This gives you, these red areas are the areas where there is very high noise, and you can see the scale. There's almost 30 to 40 dB difference from this dark blue to dark red. This map, and this is real time. Every 5 minutes, this map is getting updated because the data is there. And today the computational capabilities are such that, that kind of resolution is possible. Now, this can be used. Now, let me give you applications. I did a survey. There was a information that in 2018, the west coast of India, and particularly the Maharashtra coast, 720 kilometers of the Maharashtra coast, had 80 big whales stranding in just 1 year. And the big whales are not supposed to be seen north of Sri Lanka. In 100 years, in 1915, the first sighting had happened, and for 100 years, there was no sighting. But in 2015, or this is 2016, we had 8 big whales stranding, 40 feet blue whale, 50 feet bright whale standing in the west coast of India. And in 2018, as I said, so this, I had mapped it to the anti-piracy operation that started from 2009. The entire shipping lane got shifted closer to the coast. And what you see here is when we take any decision, whether it is security or anything else, as a global community, we must be mindful of the impact on the sustainability aspect. And this kind of tool can actually give you the whole perspective on how we can bring interventions. Now, this map I'm not here to say that you stop shipping. But at least in the ecologically sensitive period, we can at least divert the shipping. I mean, I'm a provider of the information. Let the policymakers decide what kind of interventions they would like to do and what is the cost benefit analysis has to also be done. But this kind of tools, I think, is extremely important. And I think in this particular forum, I would like to draw the attention of the audience and also some of the very senior decision makers who are present here, that these kind of tools are extremely important. Now, let me take you further. This map can also be used by the Navy to deploy submarines. I mean, the opportunities, the possibilities are endless. The same thing can be used, I mean, a little different version of the same thing can be used for the global warming. Your coral reefs and a whole lot of other applications can be used. We have, I mean, I would say in MRC, this is the core thing that we have developed, but this has been extrapolated to even shrimp farming, seaweed farming, and a whole lot of other applications. And we have got global recognition for that. Now, the International Maritime Organization has asked the government of India to be a lead nation for underwater noise because of shipping. So it's all something like this. And even when you talk about farming, I mean, now shrimp farming or seaweed farming, a map like this, a spatiotemporal representation can actually tell you spatially where you should be doing the activity and temporally when to do it. So, I mean, we can go on, but this is the power of digital ocean or digital data. We are happy to say that we have a MOU with the Ministry of Earth Sciences, who are driving the digital ocean initiative of the government of India. And the whole idea is, what will a fisherman or a coastal community do if you just give them temperature data? We have to actually reach out to them. I call it to see, to understand, and to share. To see is putting sensors and the whole mechanism how the sensor will be taken to take the data. But the second part is more important as far as we are concerned, to understand how do you do data analytics customized to the local conditions and the local requirement. And the third is to share. When you say share, what kind of technology tool? Today, even there are mobile apps that you can actually provide to a fisherman, or, and fishermen also, there are different types of fishermen. Somebody is doing shrimp farming, somebody is doing tuna, somebody is doing whatever. So we have to give them something which is more customized to their requirements. And I think the whole private sector can really come in, and, India, we are talking about Startup India. So there's a whole lot of ideas that can be taken forward and pushed. So, I mean, I can go on endlessly on this, but we'll move forward. So this is, I just want to give you, there's a 40 feet blue whale standing in June 2015. The second is a 50 feet bright whale in Jan 2016. And the third is 90 short fin pilot whales standing off Tuticorin. This is not Jan, this is September 2016. So all of them, I have done a detailed paper on the first two, but even third, I would say it is because of the underwater noise. Noise is a very important parameter for many biologically critical functions: navigation, communication, foraging. So now we are talking about Sagar vision, and a whole lot of attention is coming into the maritime sector. But we should, when we talk about environment impact assessment, the impact of noise cannot be forgotten or cannot be ignored. Now, let me take you to the freshwater system. These are the freshwater dolphins in the river system, and India is a very unique habitat of freshwater dolphins, right from Ganges to the Brahmaputra to Karnafuli and Sundarbans and a whole lot of ecosystems. And you can see this dolphin has a very unique beak, and they are blind. Because of the habitat, they are blind and they use what is called acoustic vision. We have even declared the river dolphins as the national mammal. But if you see the numbers in the Brahmaputra, it has been going down since 1995, 3,000 to 2005, 300, and I think the numbers are yet to be declared in 2016. A lot of efforts are going on, but I think the acoustic component has been lost or has not got enough attention. So we are talking about big projects. I mean, inland water transport and a whole lot of things. I'm not here to say that. I mean, I'm not a showstopper for development, but we need to. I mean, being in the Navy, I can tell you, acoustic stealth is equally important. So everything. So I mean, my multiple discussions with Dr. Benno. Even the security agencies have a role in sustainability. And how can we bring together various aspects is something important. I mean, maritime domain awareness is a term that picked up a lot of steam after the 9/11 in the US and in our region 26/11. But my worry is that it has remained a security-driven formulation and it has remained on the surface because it requires participation of a whole lot of people. Scientific community has to come together. Now, if you look at the stakeholders, as I mentioned, security, blue economy, environment and disaster management, and pure science and technology. Of course, I mean, security, internal, external security, let me not spend too much time on this. But if you go to the next level, blue economy, the Indian Ocean is the hub for energy security. We have energy hungry economies towards the east and the major energy suppliers are on the west. So how do we ensure security? How do we ensure sustainability? A whole lot of issues are there. The second is fisheries. There is a credible study that says that the fish stock is on the decline since 1996. But the present mechanized trawlers, the bycatch is of the order of 80%. How do you rationalize this? On one end, we have depleting resources, and the other side, the wastage is of the order of 80%. So there's a lot that, how do you regulate, and a whole lot of issues. Underwater domain awareness becomes important. You can see deep ocean mission, but have we really focused on the environmental aspects at all? Noise because of this, and a whole lot of issues are required. And of course, underwater noise is one of the major issues which requires, because so much development, so much activities, if we do not keep track of the complete comprehensive dimension of environmental impact assessment, I think we'll lose out. Disaster management has to definitely be given. I mean, I'm not here to say that we can prevent a natural disaster, but we can definitely minimize loss of life and property. And that will be a major thing. I mean, when we talk about climate risk, if the communities are in distress, it is a security hazard. Let us be very clear on this. And of course, science and technology. I mean, our understanding of the ecosystem that exists in the Indian Ocean is also, a lot of work is required to be done. How do we build and to create that awareness? How we can't put sensors. I mean, if you just look at India, I mean, recently the maritime India has been upgraded to 3.1 square lakh kilometers, right? Can we put sensors across the whole region? I don't think so. How do we bring smart systems, smart technologies to map the entire area? I mean, I showed you a picture and I showed you a method. There is so much more that can be done. I was in Tokyo. This is a picture where I was part of a research cruise. The whole aspect of how the academia is connected to the industry and to the user is absolutely fantastic. We need to talk about that kind of a model across the world. And I mean, what me and Dr. Benno have been discussing is that how to kind of connect every resource, every manpower to contribute to global good. This is the framework that we talk about. If you look at this cube, the four sides of the cube represent the four stakeholders. But when we talk about the tropical region, the acoustic capacity and capability building will remain the core. And no single stakeholder, I mean, we've had the 2611 incident, but can the security budget actually cater to the entire capacity building requirement that is there? I don't think so. And also we talk about a demographic advantage. I mean, Benno mentioned in his opening remarks, we are going to be the most country with the maximum population. How do you provide, I mean, the demographic, so-called demographic advantage can be a biggest challenge. How do you bring opportunities or career opportunities for the young people? I mean, young India, I mean, even when you look at the demography, I mean, the young India is 65%, isn't it? How do we break? So this actually cube answers all of that. The smaller cubes represent the various projects that we need to do or various studies that we need to do, a lot of sensing, a lot of analysis, and then the policy. And even from the government's perspective, where do you prioritize? Where you put the money? Where do you put the... I mean, there are so many aspects that are over-regulated and there are so many aspects which are not even looked at. So this can actually kind of bring a lot of structured thing that, oh, this is done, this is now, not much is required here, or this is not done, a lot of focus is required. So even allocating resources by the policymakers can also be easily looked at using this. And this, of course, will create, I mean, we say our young people are not employable. So this actually brings them, I mean, we have a lot of internship programs and a lot of such fellowship programs where, they actually do real world problem solving. It's not theoretical work at all. So I think I'll stop at this from here. So these are different ideas, just that bigger cube has been now made into smaller, like underwater radiated noise. This is very much important for the Navy, acoustic stealth, but very important for acoustic habitat degradation, even ship builders and ship design. They can all put their money together for research, field work, customized solution, and you will get effective policy, technology, and human resource. And these are some of the specifics that are required to be handled. I mean, prediction is very important. I mean, when you do climate change studies, these prediction models will be extremely important. Then only you will be able to bring effective interventions. Similarly, sediment management. I mean, people do not understand the sediment or the siltation or sediment transport in the tropical waters is completely different. We run to the Nordic countries for solution. I mean, they are happy selling their heavy engineering to us, dredging equipment. What do you do with those dredging equipment if you do not understand the sediment pattern? There's a lot to be really looked at. So you can see that this has a solution, and whether it is water resource management, inland water, everybody can come in together, pull in resources, and it's all about underwater domain awareness. Coastal and riverine communities, I don't think I need to explain this, but I think that we can contribute a lot. I mean, we developed a tool for shrimp farming. Snapping shrimps are the biggest noise makers underwater. So we developed a tool which will help deploy submarines. But then I was speaking to a senior leader and he said, Anna, what have we done for the community? The same tool has been now translated into an underwater tool for shrimp farming. I mean, we have done the complete APY analysis, area under cultivation and all that. And then we have translated this to seaweeds now. And we can do many more species. I mean, we have the complete digital framework. It can be just taken forward in various dimensions. We do these summer schools, and that's what with our colleagues from Addis Ababa, we can reach out and do these are 6 weeks programs. We can customize something which can be an online and offline mode. And we have the best of resource person. You can see senior people from the Navy, Coast Guard, from the scientific community, from the environmental community, coming together, interacting with the participants, and the participants have come from all over the country. Now we are in talks with the Ministry of External Affairs. They've been very, very positive. We want to do it in the entire Indian Ocean region, but we are happy to partner anybody to reach out to. I mean, and our initial focus is tropical waters because tropical waters are very unique. And you can see, I mean, this is one of the beach walk led by Dr. Prasanna Kumar, who was the former director of NIO, a physical oceanographer, a very senior person, and he's accompanied by a marine biologist. So the entire dimension is covered, and it's a full day beach walk, 4 different beaches in Goa. And I take a lot of pride in these kind of things because this gives them, the participants, a very, very unique experience. Of course, when we talk about sustainable development, the people, economy, nature triangle cannot be forgotten. And we have to take cognizance of all these things. I mean, communities will have to be in the focus. Their livelihood issues have to be answered. And we do a lot of work on socio-cultural, socio-economic. I mean, how do you encourage traditional knowledge, traditional practices to continue? Because they have originated in the particular location. So we have to keep track of this. And I propose this outreach, engage, sustain model, where outreach we do such seminars and webinars to sensitize everybody. Then we engage on specific issues. And then, of course, we talk about sustainably looking at policy intervention, technology intervention, and very structured capacity and capability building initiatives. And of course, I think I would recommend setting up a center of excellence. As Dr. Benno said, they've already come forward and we are going through the process. Center of Excellence, which will have 5 sub-centers, talking about research, talking about skilling, talking about academic programs, talking about innovation, and talking about policy, and all under one roof, and how they can all, in an interconnected manner, bring together value. And in my last slide, I would talk about a sustainable growth model where capacity building, capacity and capability building is the prime focus. Community support, of course, I mean, we have to reach out, and we recommend a lot of UDF fellowships so that we can bring a lot of people on board at multiple levels. And of course, community-led ESG is, I think, very, very important. I mean, it can't be something which is a top-down approach. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Das, for this insightful presentation. And now I will ask you,
Yes.
to take over the facilitation of the meeting, please.
So we have a very important speaker or a panelist for today, Mr. Bharat Singh, Director at the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. And as I know from Dr. Benno, he has been very, very actively involved with various activities. And I would also request Mr. Bharat to first talk about himself a little bit. I mean, I've just given a very broad introduction, but he may like to talk about his journey and his connection with the nature and the various activities that we are talking about today.
Thank you, Dr. Das. Thank you, Benno, and all the participants. Well, I'm relatively very new in this conservation efforts, though I have dealt mostly in the chemical sector and the coastal regulation zones. But I have been handed over the charge of Member Secretary of the Man and Biosphere Committee of India. And as Director of the Biosphere Reserve and in other assignments, I have, this is one portion of my assignment in the Government of India. Actually, the scheme that I am presently running for the Government of India is called the Biosphere Reserve Scheme, with a very small, meager amount of around rupees 12 crores annually. And this was evaluated by NITI Aayog during 2020-2021. And there has been a lot of recommendations, and there have been a lot of success stories also acknowledged. And perhaps they have done along with an independent evaluator, I think it was KPMG, who had recognized some of the successes also and the missing gaps. So accordingly, after I took over for the next financial year onwards, it was decided, and I got a consent and a mandate from my government, that we need to restructure this program in a way that is monitorable, quantifiable, and tangible outcomes. So earlier, what was happening was the Biosphere Reserve gives us an annual action plan, and then we dole out fund to them, which is, of course, a pittance, it's not much. But having said so, we could hardly relate of what were the targets, the outcomes, the timelines, and these are not also in the management information system. So we cannot predict of for the next financial also what we release, what would be the outcome. So after I took over, my superiors, my secretary and my minister have been kind enough to give me the freedom to restructure it. Then I set up a committee for restructuring this management action plan. So we decided to have a 5-year integrated management plan, which can be mapped and captured in the actual MIS systems. And for that, I took the help of the resources of GB Pant Institute and National Center for Sustainable Coastal Management, who have a fairly expertise in the marine part of biosphere reserves. So these program, it is yet to start. As a pilot, we are emphasizing on 4 biosphere reserves where this will be first executed. And then based on its success stories, it will be replicated across all other biosphere reserves in India. Having said so, still there are governments like the government of Sikkim, the government of Madhya Pradesh, who are still approaching us for identification of new biosphere reserve, which is a very good thing. And I have come here particularly to learn, like Benu has said, of sort cooperation. Certainly, the information that I gather from all these cooperative networks would be very helpful in my execution. So that was a task, and I had a small presentation, will be very short. So I will proceed with that. So my focus is more on the action plan that we are. Can make it full screen. Full screen?
Yeah. Yeah. Right click. Yes. Okay, click here.
Right one. These are objectives we all know. So currently in India, we have 18 biosphere reserves, out of which 12 biosphere reserves are in the World Network. And these 18 biosphere reserves covers around 1,426 square kilometers, which is roughly around 1/5 of the size of Spain. And the MAP committee, I happen to be the member secretary of the Indian National MAP Committee. The network, the World Network of Biosphere Reserve, we had last entry of Panna Biosphere Reserve in Madhya Pradesh in 2020. That was just before I took over. And we are in the process of facilitating Manas Biosphere Reserve in Assam to be included in the World Network of Biosphere Reserve. The first submission is being done very shortly, and then I am sure with UNESCO's India's help, this should be achievable. These are the least of the 18 biosphere reserves, which covers 16 states. The star marks are those which are included in the World Network of Biosphere Reserves. So 2 more biosphere reserves are in the offing. Those are in Madhya Pradesh. There are certain gaps of information there. We had a last meeting, and then the state of Madhya Pradesh has been requested to incorporate certain changes which UNESCO India has also suggested. So with that, I'm sure in this year, or at least in the beginning of next year, we should be able to get the designation done at a faster scale. Now, as I said, the earlier system of functioning of the Biosphere Reserve in India was evaluated by NITI Aayog, which was the earlier planning commission. And there were some broad recommendations. Well, even though they have recognized some of the achievements that we have made so far, and I have highlighted this in blue, policy to improve performance of the centrally sponsored scheme, which is a very meager scheme, but then based on the success story, it can be enhanced and then taken upscaled. So I will not read out, but these are very primary observations which the evaluator had observed in the scheme that I'm presently running. There are components of the integrated management plan. There are certain features. So as I said, while most of the action plan submitted by the Biosphere Reserve, they do have these components, but then what we are now trying to focus is on how to get it mapped in a digitized format so that we have a clear-cut delineation also, and the actions are also mapped, at least digitally. What happened is, if you see any of the designation of Biosphere Reserve as on date, we have a core area and a buffer area. But if I come to actually put it on a scale, perhaps I may not be able to delineate the markings. So that gap also we are trying to make it so that we can obtain the shape files and the KMF files of the core, the buffer, the transition zones, etc. So that there's a clear-cut understanding. I don't know whether these are being done in other biosphere reserves in other countries, but in India, we are initiating to get the KML files. The management practices, in fact, before we restructured this, we had gone through some of the management practices in Southeast Asian countries also, but where the socio-economic lifestyles are more or less similar, we try to incorporate as much as possible. But I'm sure even this implementation of this new restructured implementation plan will have gaps. So that is the main reason why we first want to execute in 4 specific sites, through which during the course of implementation of this management plan, we can identify gaps and still incorporate it. And then finally, that will be a standardized integrated 5-year period management plan where we will replicate across all other 18 biosphere reserves or any more biosphere reserves which will come in the future. So monitoring and evaluation obviously will be a part of the management plan. And then like this thing, the digital support system is very important, where we want to capture everything digitally, even from socio-economic sustainable livelihood matters also. We want to capture it digitally. There were other areas where in a biosphere reserves where we dole out funds, there are certain parameters where which comes under the what do you call it? Where the Ministry of Finance has objected, because if I pay for in order to address deforestation, if I pay for a gas cylinder, for instance, that comes under no, what do you call it? DBT, direct benefit transfer. So the moment I try to capture through direct benefit transfer, then the individual Aadhaar card number is required. So even if I want to give the facility of gas or chulas or binoculars, etc., it becomes a difficulty in my management because then it comes under direct benefit transfer. So individually at the tribal level, they won't even have an Aadhaar card, they won't even have it. So that becomes a problem. So we are trying to do away, and then alternatively, what could be other possibilities that we are trying to capture through this management plan. There are certain lead institutes who has been working for the Biosphere Reserves, and the last entry is this National Center for Sustainable Coastal Management. This is an institute established by my ministry, the Ministry of Environment and Forest. It's based in Chennai. They're mostly for marine sector, but they have expertise in Man and Biosphere Reserves also, so we have roped in them, and they are a very proactive partner. The financial planning, budget, I think it's a little premature for me to speak because that will come, as I said, this is going to be totally restructured. So once I execute these pilot projects, maybe in the next few years, it will show some result. So now, presently, we have 2 biosphere reserves, which is in the process of designation. That is the Kanha and Pench in Madhya Pradesh, and Manas for inclusion in the World Network. We are also pursuing with the state governments for identification of more biosphere reserves. And then, of course, the Indian Map Committee will be reviewing from time to time. And in the process, I am glad to learn that UNESCO is also trying for identification of new biosphere reserves in the Northeast and other states. So we will be closely collaborating. And a part of a very important feature of this integrated management plan I would focus is on Biosphere Reserve Index card. So I can have the health of the Biosphere Reserve. So what would be the parameters? So this index card is just some of the features which will, but then in the process of this pilot project, I will get to know and be able to capture what could be the indicator for a health of a Biosphere Reserve. So that is what we are trying to do. And for the implementation, even for this pilot project, also we'll be having a working committee. So that who will constitute what, just the biosphere managers, not maybe UNESCO or IUCN or whoever has expertise, that can be framed up. So in course of time, as I get more information, that can be worked out. Budget, I will not go this far, what we were spending on biosphere reserves. Now, success stories, like the success stories of the biosphere reserves, these are what Niti Aayog has captured. It's not a success story that Ministry of Environment has on its own put up here. So I have focused on only 3 biosphere reserves because there are 18, and Nilgiris being, of course, one of the first biosphere reserve in the country. And the tribal population, the socio-economic activity for upliftment of the tribal population in Nilgiri has been duly recognized in the Niti Aayog report. So that is why I wanted to mention here. And I think, of course, this is nothing new. This has been going on since the time this biosphere reserve was designated and this management action plan has been implemented. But then it has been a continuous process. So that's an encouraging part of it. And the second is the Nanda Devi Biosphere Reserve in Uttarakhand. Here also, this is a second biosphere reserve designated in India with a unique ecosystem, and the Valley of Flowers National Park and the Nanda Devi National Park, these are in the World Heritage Sites of UNESCO list. The success story also here is quite renowned, and the report of the Niti Aayog has duly captured the livelihood alternative that the Biosphere Reserve manager here has undertaken. So I'll just try to capture that. And lastly is the Norfolk Biosphere Reserve in Meghalaya. This is one of the smallest biosphere reserve. The third BR designated by this ministry, and it is also in the World Network of Biosphere Reserve. I will not go to the details of what the successes are here, but more or less it's the same story. And bee culturing, bee activities has been one of the prominent, and of late also I got information that this has expanded. So these are encouraging features which I find from the Niti Aayog report. So that would be all. Thank you.
Thank you. It is indeed very encouraging for us to know that the government is also proactively looking at various aspects, and it gives us a lot of confidence that we'll be able to contribute substantially. Thank you so much for your very insightful presentation. Next, I would request Lilian Juma from Addis Ababa to please make her presentation or her speech, and I would request you to please introduce yourself, talk about what work you are doing and what is your interest in biosphere reserves, if I can put that question to you.
Good morning from Addis Ababa. I'm Lilian, and I'm working at the natural sciences sector in Addis Ababa. So my role here is more on ecological and earth sciences, and I'm looking at working closely with Ethiopian Biodiversity Institute, which is the focal point for the Man and Biosphere Reserves. So far, we've shared about the problems that are in each and every biosphere reserve in Ethiopia, because with their uniqueness, each and every biosphere reserve in Ethiopia is unique. And with their uniqueness, there are unique problems for each and every biosphere reserve. So Dr. Bueno already talked about the projects the office has worked on before and what we look for in the future through this cooperation, as well as the vision that our director, Dr. Rita, has for the science sector in coming years. So I'll share with you. Can I share my screen? Is it possible to share? Okay.
Yes, please.
Okay. So I'll just introduce you to biosphere reserves we have in Ethiopia. I hope everyone can see my screen. We have 5 biosphere reserves in Ethiopia. Most of the biosphere reserves, 4 of them are forest, and then we have 1 lake biosphere reserve. So biosphere reserves, these are just natural laboratories here in Ethiopia. We are using them as our living laboratories. We want to find out how they support sustainability science in Ethiopia and use them as a way of, in Ethiopia, the country is almost exceeding its carrying capacity, and we have to use these biosphere reserves to reverse this. So it's just a place to test and have demonstration sites and apply all aspects of sustainability science. So for first one, we have Kaffa Biosphere Reserve. It was designated in 2010, and this is the birthplace of wild coffee in Ethiopia, and it contains more than 5,000 wild varieties of plants in this region. But at the same time, as an office, we have project that will be implemented end of this month, hopefully, is on sustainable beekeeping in the area. So we, the office, in collaboration with the headquarters, are in the process of training 2 women beekeepers in the area, so that that knowledge can be shared. It's not like the only 2 people. The people who are trained will have network of other beekeepers where they can share their knowledge. So that's one of the projects that's undergoing right now. Yayo Biosphere Reserve was designated as well in 2010. It's a biosphere reserve that is rich with natural ecosystems, and at the same time they have like forest, wetlands, they have agricultural land and archaeological sites. But at the same time, the biosphere reserve is facing high population growth, and we're looking at this as an opportunity more than a challenge. So if you have high population growth that is a youth, how can we tap on this group of people and improve the innovation in these biosphere reserves? So that's one of priority areas that the office is looking into. Sheka Biosphere Reserve. So with Kaffa and Yayo Biosphere Reserve, when we had discussion with Ethiopian Biodiversity Institute, they needed, they requested for support on development of periodic report review. They want to find out how, for the last 10 years, these 2 biosphere reserves have impacted sustainability science in Ethiopia. So one of the, most probably next year, it might be a good initiative to work with the Institute in research work or policy aspects to find out how far has these biosphere reserves shaped socioeconomic development of Ethiopia and as well as ecological development of Ethiopia. So with Sheka Biosphere Reserve, it's a forest biosphere reserve as well, but it's facing encroachment due to the area majorly practicing agriculture is the main economic mainstay of the economy there. So with a vast wealth of natural resources, there's a way of, since most of the time we practice agriculture in these biosphere reserves, and most of the time soil health is not looked into. So that's, I think, one of the main issues why the area is facing encroachment, because when soil loses fertility, they'll have to move more into the forest to find nutrient-rich soil to continue practicing agriculture. So one of the recommendations can be, how do we renovate or work with the community to make sure that the land that they are having is being well used at the same time, so that they understand what causes the degradation of the soil or land cover. And this can be one of the main recommendations into the future on how to tap on sustainable agriculture in this biosphere reserve. For the Lake Tana was designated in 2015 and currently is faced by the lake has been encroached, not encroached. There's the invasive alien species in the lake, which is water hyacinth. This is one of the main challenge affecting the livelihoods of the people in this area. So one of the recommendation, I think the same problem is faced in Lake Victoria in Kenya, but there was a time in Kenya they had a chain of products that they can have from these water hyacinths. So I think it would be good to have shared knowledge between what's happening in Lake Victoria that can be applicable in Lake Tana, because Lake Tana is as well a freshwater lake in Ethiopia, and it's the largest lake in Ethiopia. And it plays a big role in as a main source of Blue Nile as well. So, and the area is characterized with enormous heterogeneity of land uses and natural ecosystems. And the Biosphere Reserve of Lake Tana is more 2 million people. So I think that's one of the biggest biosphere reserves in Ethiopia. And with the diverse economic activities in the area, the like different solutions that should be considered when it comes to economic development of the areas within the Biosphere Reserve and outside the Biosphere Reserve, how it's affecting the lake, and how we can tap on those challenges, things that people see as challenges, but they can be opportunities for the residents of the Biosphere Reserves as well as the institutions working with these within the Lake Tana Biosphere Reserve in Ethiopia. And Majang Forest Biosphere Reserve, it faces unique challenge in Ethiopia, because from the discussions we have with the Ethiopian Biodiversity Institute, this is one of Biosphere Reserve in Ethiopia that has political problem. So some people from other parts of Ethiopia moved to Majang Biosphere Reserve, removing the natives from the land to access the agricultural land, to use the land for agricultural purposes. So this has become a political issue. So with that, it means with every element that is considered for like every activity that can be recommended for this Biosphere Reserve, political element should be included, either for national and regional governments being part of the solution when it comes to this Biosphere Reserve. And it was established just in 2017, and it's dominated by very diverse species as well, and can be a very, because people are moving into this forest, that means that the forest is yet tampered with, so the soil and agricultural activities production increases. That's why people are moving for more production of their produce. So with that, and then pockets of hope, Dr. Bueno talked about it. We'll be working with our office to develop one for Ethiopia, and hopefully we'll receive the one from India as well. It will be shared online with us. And then, our biosphere reserves have enormous potential into the future. We are considering as an office to have like interactive science exhibition in the new Art and Science Museum in Ethiopia. And this can be another project for cooperation between India and Ethiopia that the discussion already started. And at the same time, with the uniqueness of each and every biosphere reserve, we can have enormous solutions in all aspects of sustainable development, be it ecological, economic, and social aspects. So with that, I think that's it from Ethiopia.
Thank you, Lilian. Thank you so much for your very nice presentation and gave us a lot of insight about Ethiopia and the specific issues there. Next, I would request Dr. Neha to kindly make her presentation.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Das. Can I have a presentation, please? Thank you. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Neha Midha. I work as a program officer with Natural Science Program at UNESCO New Delhi office. We have already heard about Biosphere Reserve. If you look at historical approaches of protected area management or protection or conservation of areas, high biodiversity rich areas, there has been thoughts that says that fence and force approach. You isolate an area, biodiversity rich area, and let it grow. this thought process has changed in last 30 to 40 years, and Biosphere Reserve, that's what promotes a landscape approach. A landscape approach where we talk about conservation of our natural and cultural heritage, but taking into account the local communities that live close to these high biodiversity rich area, making sure that their access to these area where they have been living for centuries is not curtailed. And they should feel proud to be living close to a biodiversity rich area rather than seeing that the development, they will not have access to the development because they are living close to a biodiversity rich area, or their access to fuel or other the product that they depend on the forest is not curtailed. So that's the approach that Biosphere Reserve, UNESCO designated Biosphere Reserve sites has. So my presentation is going to be, it's mostly about a journey. You will have a touch or feel basis of how our Biosphere Reserve work. So let's go to West Bengal, Sundarban Biosphere Reserves. Established in 2001, one of the largest remaining mangroves in the world. It's the only mangrove forest in the world which is inhabited by tigers. And this is a mangrove forest. It provides protection from storm and cyclones. Is one of the nature-based solution that we always talk about. Why we need these biosphere reserve, why we need that area when we especially talk about climate change. Yes. So Mr. Bharat mentioned that for each biosphere reserve, there is a core area. This core area is the area where no human activity is allowed. This is the area which is designated by the national committee of that country, which has high biodiversity area, is a habitat of threatened species. And this area is designated based on the scientific research. That's how core area is designated. Beyond the core area is the buffer area, which it surrounds. This in the buffer area is where people live. These are the local community which live in this biosphere reserve where research can happen. And then beyond the buffer area is the transition zone. So when we talk about climate change, when we talk about nature-based solution, and we say that these areas, biosphere reserve needs to be managed, needs to be protected for us, we forget that. So if I talk about Sundarbans, if you look at the facts and figure, if you look at the buffer zone, this is the area where 3 million local communities, local people are living. And these 3 million people are dependent on Sundarban Biosphere Reserve for their livelihood. These are the people who are dependent on this Sundarban Biosphere Reserve for fuel and for leaves and for all the agriculture that doesn't work in Sundarban because of the saline water. So these local communities depend on that. One of the famous product from Sundarban is honey. The purity of honey, and it costs even more. So these traditional honey collectors, one of the best case studies that has come out from a Sundarban Biosphere Reserve. These honey collectors they go inside the Sundarban Biosphere Reserve in the buffer area, and they do so. There are only 3 months when they can collect the honey, and the traditional way is to burn and then collect the honey. And the most conflict what happens in Sundarban Biosphere Reserve is that attack by tiger. Human wildlife conflict is that what we talk about. In these 3 months, every year, 6 honey collectors lose their life. And they lose it, they are going inside for their livelihood activities. And that's the conflict which these local communities face because their livelihood is dependent on Biosphere Reserve, the area that we wish all to be conserved. Here the solution, that's where Biosphere Reserve management comes in. And in the Sundarbans, based on the scientific study, what they have done is they have designated an area within the buffer area where they put these apiary boxes. And the area and the number of the apiary boxes has been decided based on the scientific study, because there is a particular kind of honey that required a particular kind of bee, particular kind of flowers. So the scientific Depending on the capacity of that area, the area has been designated by Sundarban management plan, based on the management plan. And these local communities, they have made committees, and these local community place these boxes, and this whole area is fenced to save these honey collectors. And Biosphere management has also been helping this local community in refining their product so that they can sell in a market in a better price. Here, I would also like to show you a very short film that will give you a feel of Sundarban Biosphere Reserve. Can we play video number 1, Sundarbans? Yes.
আমি সুন্দরবন বায়োস্ফিয়ার রিজার্ভে কুমিরমারি গ্রামে থাকি।
Covering an area of 9,630 square kilometers, Sundarbans is the world's largest remaining tectonically active deltaic mangrove forest. With an exceptional range of flora and fauna, it has the highest number of mangrove biodiversity globally. This is the only mangrove tigerland in the world. Measures taken by the management have been effective in controlling human-tiger conflict. Nylon net fences have been erected along the forest village interfaces. Quick response teams are stationed at strategic locations to manage tiger straying incidents. Regular interactions with fringe villagers have improved mass awareness in Sundarbans remarkably.
আমার সুন্দরবন গর্বে।
I hope you notice the mask that is worn by the local community to save itself from the tiger. So the tiger feels that your eyes are behind and it doesn't attack you. Tiger always attack from behind. So that's one of the thing is done by the local communities. Thank you. So this I've already covered. So let's go to south of India, Gulf of Mannar Biosphere Reserve, Tamil Nadu. Hotspot of marine biodiversity, key habitats, coral reefs, seagrass bed, mangroves, home to 4,000 marine flora and fauna, including sea turtle, whales, dolphin. Blue carbon stock, when I will talk about climate change, the estimated value is 17,800 USD. That's what Gulf of Mannar is about, the carbon stock. So again, when we talk about such kind of marine biodiversity, the red area is the core area, green is the buffer, and other here it's the transition zone. Here, 110,000 families are dependent on this Gulf of Mannar Biosphere Reserve. Out of that, 56,000 families identified below poverty line. Issues, we all know, growing population, and in Gulf of Mannar, use of the modern fishing gears. These local communities cannot compete with the new fishing gears that are coming in, and that's what caused conflict with the local communities, these people which are living below poverty line. Destruction of this natural beauty by over-exploitation, destructive fishing activity, infrastructure development causes damage to the coral reef. Again, Gulf of Mannar is again one of the best example from India from community-based resource management. The decision of where the fishing would take place, the capacity, the limits of the fishing harvest, everything in the Biosphere Reserve Management Plan has been decided via participatory approach, is where Forest Department and local communities, they sit together and they decide that which area they need to go for fishing, which area needs to be left behind. So this is one of the really good example of community-based resource management. Here also, I would like to show you a very short film from Gulf of Mannar. Can we play the second film?
வணக்கம். இந்தியாவில் உள்ள மன்னார் வளைகுடாவில் நாங்கள் வாழ்ந்து கொண்டிருக்கிறோம்.
The Gulf of Mannar is the first biosphere reserve in South and Southeast Asia, extending from Rameshwaram to Kanyakumari over an area of 10,500 square kilometers. The core area consists of 21 islands with mangrove, coral reef, and seagrass ecosystems and is home to a biological diversity of 4,223 species, including the dugong. The community directly depends on the reserve for their livelihood, mainly by means of fishing. The Tamil Nadu Forest Department has carried out coral and seagrass restoration projects. The Gulf of Mannar Biosphere Reserve Trust provides vocational training, especially for women, to encourage alternate livelihood activities such as pickling and tailoring, and has created awareness to reduce fishing pressure, aiming towards protecting life below water.
மன்னார் வளைகுடாவை பற்றி சொல்வதற்கு நாங்கள் பெருமைப்படுகிறோம்.
Now let's go to Kanchenjunga. Established in 2018 in the state of Sikkim, the first fully organic state of India. Here, the core zone have over 150 glaciers, 73 glacier lakes, and the prominent one is the famous 26-kilometer long Zemu Glacier. And Kanchenjunga Biosphere Reserve is habitat for the musk deer, snow leopard, red panda, and Himalayan tar. Here I would like to show you again a short movie from Kanchenjunga.
Tashi dile
Hamri mo kayu Kanchenjunga Biosphere Reserve Renjong Gyakarlom itu buka tumit nimo takchi.
Kanchenjunga Biosphere Reserve has a unique mountain ecosystem due to variations in elevation, climate, landscape and habitat, and vegetation type which ranges from subtropical to alpine curve, and is one of the highest ecosystem in the world. 80% of the Biosphere Reserve is a vast water reservoir which supports thousands of the life system down below and towards plain areas. Government initiatives like ban on grazing, ban on collections on non-timber forest produce for commercial scale, removal of cattle seed from the forest land, and proper disposals of waste providing alternative employment and income generation opportunities in form of organic farming, ecotourism, cardamom plantation, piggery, etc. Substituting the use of firewood with LPG, low fuel consumption devices like cookers, electric rice cookers, etc. and mass afforestation program are major initiative taken for sustainable forest management to prevent land degradations and halt biodiversity loss.
हामी बायोस्फियर रिजर्भलाई हजुरसँग साझा गर्नमा गर्व महसुस गर्दछौं।
Nilgiri means blue mountains. Mr. Bharat has already talked about Nilgiri, and I would just like to add that Nilgiri Biosphere Reserve is home to more than 11,000 elephants, and which is the single largest Asian elephant population in the world. Similarly, it's home to 500 tigers, which is the largest contiguous tiger population in the world. And India is proud of these facts and figures. Nanda Devi, again, Mr. Bharat has already talked about, is one of the best example of community-owned responsible tourism. They have shown the way that how, I mean, Nanda Devi is the place where trekkers go regularly. Huge crowd goes, and these local communities, how they get benefit because of the people coming and how they manage that area is one of the best examples. I had another movie, but looking at the time, I would like to end here, and thank you. Thanks for please.
Definitely a very beautiful perspective, if I may call it. Thank you for your nice presentation. I would request Dr. Swayamprabha Das, Deputy Regional Vice Chair, South and East Asia, IUCN Commission on Environmental, Economic and Social Policy.
Thank you. Can I have present? Thank you.
I'm Swayamprabha, and I have looked at the marine ecosystem after I finished with my PhD, which was on the Antarctic policies, international cooperation, environmental diplomacy. So that is where and how I moved to WWF and working with their coastal and marine program. And that is where I think the foundation was laid for me to look at marine biodiversity, coastal ecosystems, and marine ecosystems. Thereafter, this continued despite me shifting to other areas of work, which included looking at the UN Convention to Combat Desertification with the Ministry of Environment, Forest, Human Development with Niti Aayog, 10 years with UNDP working on skilling, water conservation. And then I moved on to join CEW very recently. And I'm on secondment to the G20 Secretariat here to the Government of India right now. And here again, I'm working with the Environment and Climate Sustainability Working Group. Whatever I present today is based on my personal capacity. And the disclaimer is this: I'm not representing any of the organizations that I worked with, including the Government of India. This is more with my capacity as a commission member to CESP and the Deputy Regional Vice Chair to CESP. I think most of the conversations we have had has covered marine biodiversity, but a little less. So I would like to just kind of take you through why we need to focus on the marine biodiversity, because here we are sitting in the UNESCO House, which is a cluster office. Out of the 6 countries that we have here, 4 of them are maritime nations. So that makes us very well poised to talk about the marine biodiversity and marine conservation in this forum. So oceans and us. When we talk about the oceans, we sitting in Delhi, we are too far away from the oceans. So it doesn't really hit us how oceans can impact our lives. But then when we're talking about the weather systems, we're talking about the air, the food, the climate, medicine, transportation, and tourism, it's all there. The coastal and marine is where we all flung to when we feel that we need to have a bit of well-being, we need to move forward, and we need to have our fishes coming from the coastal areas. So that is where how we are connected to the oceans. If I may draw your attention, the climate that absorbs about oceans absorb about 93% of the heat from carbon emissions and regulates our climate weather patterns. And medicines, we are into bioprospecting, so that's another area that is opening up, and that is where the oceans are going to be at the forefront of it. When we look at how we are actually using our oceans, we have been very, very negligent. We have not been very responsible towards what we are drawing from the oceans. We have almost exploited 90% of our marine stock, marine fish. 50% of our coral reef systems are destroyed because of climate change, anthropogenic factors, and 47, actually it's 50% now because of the latest mangrove report that we have, state of the mangroves. So we have lost about 50% of our mangroves to either deforestations or to changing land use patterns in those areas. What are the challenges that we are facing? So the drivers of the coastal and marine ecosystems, we know: overexploitation of our resources. Fishing, which Dr. Das has already talked about, is how we are going into using fishing gears, how we are not really looking at being responsible fishers. So IUU fishing, bycatch, trawling, the ghost nets, oil and gas, mineral explorations. Trade is also a very important factor that we need to look at. And that is also leading to a lot of overexploitation. Coral mining. Gulf of Mannar, in fact, faced a lot of challenges with coral mining for the cement companies. So, and there was quite a big of hue and cry for that as well. And that finally stopped. So then we come to the anthropogenic activities, leading to habitat loss, species loss. There is contamination, which is from the land to the sea and from the sea to the sea. So the land and oceans are always interconnected, be it the plastics, be it the contaminants, the agricultural runoffs that goes off into the oceans. So it's all interconnected. Dr. Das has very clearly mentioned about the underwater noise. So that's one particular issue which is little understudied and that needs to be a bit more focused on. We also need to look at the cables and the underwater pipelines. gas pipelines. We are not even talking about how they interfere with the natural marine biodiversity habitats. But we had a methane gas leakage underwater pipeline. So that should be a kind of a warning that we need to be very careful about what the pipelines are being laid and how they are being managed, maintained, and what are their risks that's involved with it. The effect of climate change, of course, is there for us to see: ocean acidification, deoxygenation, shifting currents. This has all impacted the marine biodiversity. There's been a lot of species migration that's been happening. And there is also the movement of species, not just across latitudinally, but it is also depth-wise. So they have moved from depths, and that is what is actually shifting the catch for the fisheries, for the fishermen. And that is impacting, because traditionally you would be catching a particular species of the fish, and all of a sudden over the years, that number depletes because the fish population has migrated to other waters, and the fish from the lower may have come up, or from the upper layers may have gone down. So the whole composition of fishing has shifted. So that's another livelihoods impact that is being felt. With my UN experience, I would like to share that we are in the middle of the triple planetary crisis. And the slide on here actually reflects onto that. The triple planetary crisis that we are facing is a biodiversity loss, climate change, and pollution. So this is impacting the marine ecosystem very drastically. In few years, we will have more plastics in our oceans than we would have fish. So, and that is going to impact each and every one of us. So probably that's something we need to be very mindful about. We are having marine plastics in fishes, turtles, whales. When you cut them open, when they die of suffocation, when they choke to death, and when they are examined, it's usually the plastic that's found in their stomach. And that's not what a healthy planet would look like. So probably our containing or reducing, eliminating plastics is of great importance. That is a problem that needs to be tackled at the same level that we're talking about climate change right now. Tropical waters, I wanted to actually show this, basically saying that the tropical waters are the rich biodiversity areas, which has a maximum number of mangrove forests, coral reefs, and seagrass meadows. So that is the area, this is the belt, which actually has been studied, but probably more, because I think we know more about our universe outside space than we know about our oceans. So probably we need to focus ourselves more on science, more on policies, more on research in this area. And here is where I think, Dr. Boy, you mentioned about South-South cooperation. So you have a whole number of countries out there where you could actually cooperate. And this could be one of the areas where most of the work on the marine is being done, needs further explorations, further research needs to be done. This I'm not going to talk about, because this we already know. Coral reef, mangroves are all intertidal beaches. They are all being impacted by climate change. So, and what we are seeing is species loss, habitat loss, fisheries redistribution, and this is impacting food security and loss of the ecosystem services. These are the projections that I've picked up from the recent IPCC report, which was very specifically on the marine ecosystem and cryosphere. And here we talk about, this is the projections that they are coming up through their modeling. And they are saying that we would be losing about 20 to 90% of the existing coastal wetlands, salt marshes, 40 to 95%. Sea grass meadows, the species will adapt and will move forward, but in a very different way. And they're more resilient to warming temperatures. Habitat loss for the endemic species is also predicted. Coral reefs are going to face, and we have seen the Great Barrier Reef in Australia facing those challenges. The reefs in Lakshadweep and Maldives areas are again, we have seen them how they have also kind of, died because of the fluctuating temperatures. The fish catch is projected to decline 3 times and more than the global average. And this is particularly for the tropical areas, because the fish movement redistribution is going to be quite drastic if we don't keep our temperatures within 1.5 or maximum 2, but then it's going to fluctuate. And the studies and the research is going on, but it doesn't give us a very positive feel right now. So it's going to impact your food security, and your livelihoods as well. So what are the challenges we are facing? So I thought that we always keep talking about the biodiversity challenges, but we don't talk about the we facing challenges as researchers, as policymakers, practitioners. So what are we looking at? We need to look and be more futuristic with the emerging issues and how they impact the ecosystems, and what are the potential ways or solutions of dealing with them. We need to be more aware how to mitigate the negative impacts. Precautionary principle, we tend to talk about polluter pays, or we talk about CBTR, RCs in climate change context. But are we talking about the precautionary principle? Where are that? So we have kind of forgotten. So let's bring it to the thing. We need to do the horizon scans. Capacity and gaps in policies are always there, no matter how good policies we write. But when it comes to implementation, we somehow miss it. So I'm very encouraged to hear Mr. Singh talk about how you are going to rework and relook at the management plans and pilot them. Probably that's the way to go forward, sir. And that's very encouraging. Thank you. When we're looking at researchers, conservation practitioners, there's a lot, as I said, we don't know about the ocean. So we should be very mindful about what is not there. Be ready for the unknown and look at those, how they can catalyze further research. So something might lead to something else. So it has to be an evolving science. It has to be an evolving eyes for newness, for things that's unknown. And we are right now doing the seabed mapping that has started, that's going on. It's a very tedious, very long-drawn process, but that's going to give us some great information about how the seabeds look, which we are really not familiar with. When we are looking at public, we should not forget the people. So what we need to build on is more about, how do I go back? Okay, I can just stop probably. So the people need to be made more aware of what the oceans and what the climatic systems are like, the circulation patterns, the food, how it all impacts us. So that awareness is what is missing, and we need to build more of that. So how do you enhance or measure your biodiversity conservation? There are sustainable tools that's being planned, prepared. IUCN has a lot of them. Other tools are also available globally, so how we can use them. We need to look at more about strategizing. How do you manage, monitor, evaluations? So what you cannot measure is what you cannot monitor, or what you cannot make it better. So when you monitor them, you are knowing that what is falling short, and then you do the mid-course alignment or mid-course managements, and then you take it forward. Cooperation and coordination with the stakeholders. Biosphere reserves are great examples of that, where you are putting people in the center as well, and you are doing those management plans with the people, which is very, very important. And you're doing it with the state government. So there's a whole range of people, stakeholders that you are taking into your confinement, and when you're talking and working it out. So that's a great way to go. We talk about gender often, but do we really bring women into those conversations? Do we really talk about the gender sensitivities, responsive actions within biodiversity? That's something we need to probably delve into. The LNOB concept that the SDGs bring with it is leaving no one behind, is another concept where we should also talk about the people with disabilities, the elderlies, probably the youth, and how you bring them all together into your biodiversity conservation, because they are also equally impacted, and they are also putting some pressures or stressors on the environment, on the biodiversity, and there's an interaction. Human activities management is very, very important. We think that our planet can support and we can do anything about it. But at the present consumption levels, we'll need 3 Earths to sustain. So probably how we are managing our activities, how we are reducing our consumption patterns, that is very important. So SDG 12 comes into play here. Capacity building for adoption of best management practices. The South-South cooperation that is being mooted here, Dr. Boy, is an excellent way to go forward. And how you can share knowledges and talk about information dissemination. How do I move this? And then sustain investments in conservation. When we are talking about investments globally, we hear it's all about climate finance. Where is the biodiversity finance happening? And if I'm not mistaken, sir, you can correct me, the JEF funding is also kind of shrinking. There are more limitations, more restrictions, more guidelines coming in. The GCF is again focused on climate. So everything is becoming more climate focused. So where is the money for biodiversity? So are we even talking about that? We talk about developmental finance. We talk about ODAs for the development sector. We talk about climate finance to deal with the climate sector. But where is that money for the biodiversity? Why are we putting it back? Should it not be a part and parcel of the conversations that we are having at a global level? Technology innovations are again something that needs to be more affordable and effective at the local level. It cannot be a West-driven kind of a paradigm where it's being trial tested there, but can we have innovations which is happening? And there's a lot actually happening. Innovation challenges are happening. UNDP has a Ocean Innovation Challenge that they're running, where they're looking at very local solutions to local problems. I think there are 3-4 more such innovation challenges that's there in the international domain, which looks at various kinds of management skills. So I'm going to skip that little corner. We all know that tools. Sorry. So this is something that I wanted to leave you with a little thought. What I feel in my little understanding of this ecosystem and how the emerging issues are coming up. Ocean literacy, education, information, communication, this is something which is very, very important. And UNESCO, IOC, Intergovernmental Oceanic Commission, is doing excellent stuff on ocean literacy. Can we bring that to our area, to this cluster office, and talk about it in this? Because students don't talk oceans when they are talking here. In Delhi, if you sit and look at Delhi, they would know about Nainital, Mussoorie. They would know about Goa, but they won't know about Munnar. They would probably have heard about Sundarbans, but they really don't know. They don't know what kind of marine biodiversity is there in Gujarat. They don't know what intertidal mudflats are. They don't know what sea grassbed meadows are. They wouldn't have heard about dugongs in their life. So can we change that? Can we bring ocean literacy to be a part of our curriculum, to be a part of our discourse, to a part of a dialogue? When you are doing these trainings, even with the policymakers, can you take them more to these biodiversity hotspot areas and let them have a hands-on experience? Probably to the biosphere reserves. Let them see how it works, how planning happens. It doesn't happen in sitting in AC rooms on comfy chairs. It happens in the field. How does it happen? So probably that's something that we should be driving at, sharing more information. The next one that I would like to place on the table is about one ocean, one health, and one planet. And this emerges actually from the pandemic, which actually showed us the interconnectivity between the biodiversity, between the species and its interaction with the humans. Zoonotic diseases are here to stay. And probably with climate change and our immunities always at risk, our food, our work systems changing, we are actually putting our health at risk at some point. So can we look at one ocean, one health, one planet, and how we can bring it all together through a good dietary system, because oceans are there for the well-being, but can we bring that health concept also when we're talking about oceans? And oceans health is our health as well, if I may say that. The third is, how are you managing your marine pollution? Marine pollution, as I said, is not only about talking about plastics, but it's also about the underwater noises that we have, the cables, everything that connects to us. We have been responsible to put it there within the oceans, in the ocean, into the marine ecosystem. And anything that goes off, we are responsible for it. So how are we going to manage those marine pollutions? Are there technologies that's available there? Is there financing that's available there where the tropical countries or the countries where we have more issues, can they avail of those technologies and those financing mechanisms? And probably here also we can have the private sector coming in and pitching in and looking at the kind of technologies you are dealing with. Can we bring them here? The circular marine or blue economy or the oceans economy is growing, it's picking up steam. But in this area, in this region of where we are sitting, it's still very nascent. We are still trying to figure out what the blue economy paradigm would be. We have a draft policy that was put out by MOES, but do we know how we are going to implement it? We are still figuring that out. How are we going to do that back with, say, the Maldives, with Sri Lanka? The Sri Lanka is in debt crisis. Is this the right time because it's an island state? It's an island country. Is it the right time where we can turn that whole economy into a blue economy? How do we do that? How does that whole paradigm shift will happen? How does that transformation happen? So can we put a little bit of thought into that, and where we are bringing in the renewals? So here you are dealing not just with the economy, but you're here dealing with the environment, climate components as well. And you're bringing in the women empowerment. Women are a very important constituent when you're talking about coastal and marine fisheries. Can we give them not the back seat, but the front seat? Can you train them, the next generations? Can they be trained as managers? And can then be put through the marine fisheries value chain? Can they be actually operating that value chain? Can that whole value chain be dependent on renewable energy for warehouse storing, cooling, for processing? They're already doing the drying bit in the southern in India. They are doing it in Tamil Nadu. They're all drying their fishes in the sun. But can you make it better? Can you make it cleaner? Can you make it safer? Blue carbon credits for the local communities. Here, I would like to actually talk more about the mangrove ecosystem. It is being accounted for in the NDCs, but how do you make it more visible? It's not visible, and it's just a very fraction of it that we are actually accounting for. Can we push this a little bit forward so that there is more community-based conservation for the mangroves that can be pushed? And can we build this whole credit system that goes back to the communities? So the whole carbon credits, can this go to the community for their development, for their livelihood support, and again encourage them to conserve those areas of mangroves while deriving benefits? The last is a green-blue wall. This is the green-blue wall that is already there in the Western Indian Ocean, in African countries. Can we bring it down to this side of the Indian Ocean, of the Arabian Sea? And can we extend that? And this could be one of your takes for the South-South cooperation. Unfortunately, Ethiopia is a landlocked country, but Kenya is there. They're driving.
Now it is. Hasn't always been.
Yes. Yeah, now it is a landlocked. Yes. So probably can you stretch that? Can you build this green-blue wall, which could be through interconnectivity? And this would also help because there is a lot of migration that happens in this sector of fisheries, of the marine species, and that is also being impacted. In fact, I was in one of the discussions. I'll go to this one. So this is what is actually happening in 2022. So it's actually the year of the oceans as it looks like. So we have already had the UN Oceans Conference in Lisbon. UNEA talked about marine plastics, and we are coming about with a plastic treaty that's going to have a big impact on our marine ecosystems. The Ramsar is starting on the 5th of November, COP27 at Sharm el Sheikh from 7, and the CBD is in December. On the CBD is actually going to talk about the post 2020 global biodiversity framework, which is very interesting. And one of the things that really reached out to me was about the concept of connectivity. So how are the biodiversity connectivity, the corridors that we talk about, how are those corridors happening? And they came up and said that in the marine sector, the corridors are not happening because there is no connectivity. In the land, you can have continuum, but in the marine sector, it's very difficult to have a continuum. You cannot have the whole coastline as a marine protected area because it's going to impact the livelihoods of the people. And also, how do you measure them? So the indicators for the marine is underdeveloped. It's being discussed and developed. So there are more challenges in the marine area in the oceans than you have on the land. So probably this is the right time where we can actually start focusing. This is the decade of the ocean science for sustainable development. This is also the ecosystem restoration decade. So we have ample of opportunities here that can actually help us build this whole momentum on protecting our marine ecosystems, the tropical waters, and the species and the ecosystems here. The red list, IUCN red list of species, IUCN of red list of ecosystems could be the basic indicators where we can try and look at our focus areas. The last slide, these are the key messages that I would like to leave behind, is that biodiversity and climate are interconnected. You cannot talk about them in isolation. They impact each other, they influence each other. Ecosystem-based approaches where you're putting the people in the center, along with that NBS, that is the nature-based solutions, can we bring both of them together to find solutions to biodiversity conservations, to ecosystem restorations, and how do you build that narrative for sustainable development goals, for all the environmental goals that you have up there. The IUCN Global Standards for NBS is readily available as the guidelines for that. We can always take a look at that. The data and information sharing is very critical, very important, because without good data, without robust data, and also the data which is in real time, planning and management is very tough. So can we look at data sharing within this? Can we look at how marine special planning in high seas are being looked at, the BBNJ discussions that's happening on the high seas, which actually had a roadblock, unfortunately. But then how can you bring them all together to move forward? The interconnectedness, source to the sea, all rivers lead to the oceans. The kind of water that is being carried in our rivers is impacting the estuarine ecosystems, the wetlands. So the saltiness of that or the freshness of that is impacting those, how should I say, these zones which are interconnected. So can we look at that? So the source to the sea approach could be one. It could be for the contaminants. It could be for the pollutions. It could be for the nutrients also that's traveling through the oceans, through the rivers to the oceans. So we need to look at the interconnectivity of the ecosystems. The tropical ecosystems are very site specific. So can we look at just the tropical ecosystems in itself with innovations, traditional knowledge, the science that goes behind it, the policy that supports it? SDG 14, that's the last point, and SDG 14 is actually the least funded SDG that we have seen. There are pledges made, but we are not really seeing countries actualizing them. How do you make that happen? Can you bring in the concept of private sector investments? Can we talk about blended finance? Can we try something? Can we pilot blue bonds in India? I would like to do that, Dr. Boyer. Honestly, that's something we should do. And it's not difficult. Seychelles has done that, blue bonds. Barbados has recently done that. So there are examples that's happening. Can we trial them here? One pilot, can we do that here? And that would be a great, great contribution that we would be doing and actually seeding the way for more kind of blended finance mechanism, because public finance is low. UN finances are also on the slide. So where do you get it? So it has to be a combination of finance. So can we look at that? Can we look at carbon credit blue financing mechanisms for India? And I would leave everyone with that thought, then how can we together bring about a change for a healthy oceans, for a healthy planet? Yes. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Swayamprabha. I think it was a fantastic presentation with a lot of details and very precise points made. Just want to remind you that in the MRC UDA Digest, which is run by Nishtha here, she is the editor of that, we have 2 detailed papers on blue bond and how it can be done, and how the UDA framework can really drive the blue bonds. We've done an analysis of why Seychelles had to go for it, what were the conditions that encouraged or pushed them to blue bonds, and what it can do, what can be done in India or the ecosystem that we have here. So I think we've had some fantastic panel discussion. I mean, all the panelists have brought some very, very unique points, and I'm so happy with the spectrum of aspects that got covered in this seminar today. We are running short of time. We had another very, very important speakers, Ambassador Mudgal, who was the architect of the Sagar vision of the Honorable Prime Minister. Today he could not join, unfortunately, for some reason. We also were supposed to have Dr. Shalia Shah from the Ministry of Education and Dr. Sandeep Mukhopadhyay from the Ministry of Earth Sciences. We will definitely have them in our, probably I think you all agree that we need to have a part 2 of this discussion, and we will surely plan that. I would like to quickly also acknowledge the presence of Mr. Avinash, who is here, and also Dr. Ritu is here. And also my colleagues, Ananya is here, who looks at the Brahmaputra, various aspects of Brahmaputra, right from policy to technology and capacity building. My colleague Yukti is here, who's looking after freshwater systems. And what she is uniquely bringing to the table is putting water resource management and water quality management together. Unfortunately, we have 2 different ministries, but I think it requires, so we are working on it, sir, and you will get a lot of material, and our website has a lot of material, but we also run a unique platform called the UDA Digest, which has now, I think, reached about 60-70 articles, and I would request the audience to please have a look. And that is well managed by my communication head, Nishtha is here, who looks after the entire UDA Digest. And I think we have some very, very rich and diverse aspects of the UDA framework covered in the UDA Digest. And I think it's now going to grow at a very different pace. And what Nishtha tells me, I think monthly we'll have 10 to 12 papers by 10 different people writing on different aspects of the UDA. So it could be much more, but definitely she assures me that 10 articles a month, which is, I think, significant. So it's, and also you will see we have more than 100 research papers on different aspects, which is again managed by Ananya here, and she assures me that this is going to grow at a much faster rate. So what we are trying to push is the knowledge, is the body of work, which is available to everybody, and nothing is controlled. Whatever we produce is all available freely to anybody who wants to log in, and no, we don't even ask you to log in. I mean, you just click and everything is available. So I think we'll end this seminar at this note. It's a very positive note that we are closing it, and I would request Dr. Beno to give his summing up.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Das. And Dr. Das, thank you very much for your very enthusiastic presentations and sharing of the session. So basically, we are already in a phase where we should have turned to the new normal for sustainability, should have been the new normal when Biosphere Reserves came into existence in 1971, because we knew already 50 years ago that we have these issues, and these issues are exponentially growing, and they are not going away by themselves somehow. So thank you very much to Dr. Dasses and everybody else for your enthusiasm here, because sustainability has to be the new normal. And we are environmental managers here in this room, one way or the other, whether we are seasoned or young. And it is really us. There's not somebody else jumping out of the brushwood and solving all the problems for us somehow. And the 17 SDGs that we have, they are not being achieved in time. And why are they not being achieved? Because partially there is not enough political will, or there is enough political will being expressed, but not implemented. And then, of course, we had the pandemic. Now, arguably, the pandemic could have been avoided right from the beginning. It wasn't. It was not avoided. Could have been avoided. I am firmly convinced that it could have been avoided, and all the money that was spent on it could have gone into socio-ecological issues in the world. Now then, after the pandemic came to a better situation, because we're still in it, they made up another crisis, armed crisis. First in Ethiopia, then in the Ukraine, then in other parts of the world, costing not only a lot of human tragedy, but also a lot of money. So that could also have been avoided. I don't think that there's anybody in this room who would argue with me that the Ukraine crisis could not have been avoided. And just imagine all the money that is being spent on that, which should have been spent on Paris Agreement, biodiversity, pollution, the real issues that we have, the real threats, the real things that we need to defend ourselves against. Water, food, energy security. We talked about we shouldn't leave people behind. There are already a lot of people being left behind. A lot of people, almost 1 billion, are suffering from access to food daily. That's 1 out of 8 of us. 1.2 have no or limited access to electricity. More than half of humanity has a difficulty of accessing fresh drinking water at least 1 month per year. So that's the situation, how it really is. If you could put on the screen a website called Quest for Action, I would just like to share that with you. QUEST number 4 Action, one word. That's a website that we have developed during the lockdown.
Numerical.
Number 4, yeah, number 4, and then ACTION.org. That is it. So that is something that we have developed, also in support of the United Nations Decade for Ecosystem Restoration. We have not labeled that as a UNESCO website because we want that to be a website, an interactive website between many UN agencies and IUCN and WWF and any other responsible person or organization who wants to play with us. It's UNESCO's property. We have the search for action, the search for solutions, search for implementing the solutions. We have 4 columns, one on mangrove, the book there that has the cloud, the rainy cloud and the sun. It's on climate science. The dolphin with the twinkling eye is Plastic Initiative, and the leaf, which is a book, is the UNESCO Green Academies, which we would like to convert into United Nations Green Academies, which is schools and any other buildings, not talking about eco schools or green schools, converting the building into an environmentally friendly building, environmentally friendly schoolyards, environmentally friendly behavior of the teachers and the students, and inviting the communities and be there. And we cannot do that alone in UNESCO. We need IUCN and UNEP. UN Habitat is already our partner. The Southeast Asian Organization for the Ministry of Education, CMIO, they are already our partner. So we really would like to invite you. I'll come back to that in a minute during my remarks. Biosphere Reserve's core areas are very interesting in response to what you said in terms of fisheries. We probably have already more plastic than fish in the oceans. And we have overfished all of the marine areas of our planet. And in many areas, fisher folks have already turned from the prime fish species to other fish species. And then the bycatch is just, I find no words on how to talk about that. It is just unbelievable. In any case, for example, in the Emirate of Abu Dhabi, there's the Merawa Biosphere Reserve. There, the fisher folks have agreed to protect the coral reef areas as core areas and not go fishing there. And because of that, they have a higher fish output and they're catching more fish outside the core area. So they're quite happy with it. This is also something that could be done, for example, in the Gulf of Mannar or in other coastal marine areas in Africa, in Asia or elsewhere. Plastics, again, we cannot just talk about plastics and climate change and biodiversity. The cumulative effect of it is what has to bother human survivability. And not very many people understand that, and not many people are working on that. But we cannot just look at, here's the plastic pollution, and here's the climate change, and here's the socio-ecological dimension. It has to be looked at in a comprehensive fashion and in a concerted action. UNEP can't do it alone, UNDP can't do it alone, IUCN, governments not, UNESCO not either. So we really have to get together. Maybe this is a new beginning here. Yeah, we had, just to sum up, we had opening remarks on UNESCO. I hope I could let you know a little bit about the importance of UNESCO. There are so many United Nations funds and agencies and programs. Personally, I understand why, but it doesn't mean that I'm a fan of it, because I don't think there's anybody who really understands that there's 55 or more specialized United Nations agencies. But we are really trying very hard to work with each other, and it's very important to work with each other as well. The good news is we have here intellectual representatives who have spoken, including from UN agencies and IUCN, and we have the Indian Man and Biosphere National Committee here. We have just met each other only a few weeks ago for the first time. And I hope we can develop a very, very strong, solid partnership and friendship, because the friendship is also required. And we have the Maritime Research Center here, which also braces itself to become a center of excellence for maritime and marine, coastal and riverine and terrestrial issues, such as the ones that we are discussing. IUCN, UNDP, others, very interesting presentations. Thank you, everybody, for the presentations. Thank you for listening, for being with us. In the future, of course, we are aiming at tangible results in support of South-South cooperation. You mentioned the green-blue wall
initiative. That's an IUCN initiative.
Let's see how it goes. I would also strongly suggest that we should also look into North-South cooperation, because the northern part of our planet has more terrestrial area available than the southern part. The southern part has much more oceans, and for that reason in the north there are living many more people. There's much more economic business going on. That means there's also more money, and we of course also want to tap into that money to support the south. And not only the north, and there are countries willing and available who could support southern parts of the planet. Of course, the private sector has to play a huge role. The private sector are companies, they have significantly more profit and money available than certain countries, than governments. They have a responsibility, they have a role. In many cases, they also have a willingness. If we look, for example, into the energy sector, they have a responsibility not only because they make so much profit, but also because they put so much carbon into the air. So, but at least all companies start considering themselves as energy companies, and many of them are reaching out, and they are willing to pay something back into the global rectification of socio-ecological issues. I mentioned Ethiopian Airlines. We had a discussion with them. They already supported the multimedia feature that we developed for Lake Tana. Maybe they are willing to support other multimedia features, maybe starting in India and in Ethiopia, and do that together. Another company that I would like to mention is based here in India. It's the oldest motorcycle company in the world. It's Royal Enfield. We have a cooperation with them on intangible cultural heritage in the northeast of the Himalayas of India and in the northwest of the Himalayas in India. And we will also invite them to discuss with us intangible cultural heritage inside biosphere reserves in India. An opportunity that we have, following up on your very enthusiastic pledge, if we look into ocean issues and into blue carbon issues, we can always get together at relatively low cost, as we've done it today. We have this room available here where we can host up to 35, 40 people. We also have an auditorium downstairs where we can host up to 120 people in a theater-like fashion. So we can always make that available. Arnab here and myself, we are supporters of seminars that we can organize. We could, for example, have a seminar on what should we do with this Quest for Action website, because it does not necessarily have to be managed only by UNESCO. It could be co-managed by somebody else. These 4 columns: mangroves, plastic, United Nations Green Academies, and the climate science. We could also have a seminar on oceans. So please, if you wish, send me a suggestion, but don't expect us to do all the work. It has to be shared.
Absolutely.
Great, absolutely. We can connect universities with it. I'm working for a university.
We can always do that, because this is where we turn from the global issues through local discussions, and then we can generate local activities.
Excuse me, sorry, could I propose something just as you were talking about? Because I come from the art. I do not want to just be identified as that, but there is a lot of talk about science and sustainability. There is commerce and sustainability. Art is left behind. Like you said, a lot of people are left behind. I think art also has a lot to do with sustainability, and we have been working on that, on the equality of subject disciplines. So we could have a seminar on that.
Certainly, I mean, Lakshmi, you are here because of that. I mean, we didn't have much time to talk about it. As I said in the part 2, definitely you are going to be an important part of it. Definitely that dimension. We have worked with Lakshmi, and she runs an organization called O, and we have done a program for children where she has talked about the mention of oceans in the Shakespeare literature. So, I mean, there's a whole lot of dimensions. I think we'll talk about it.
Sorry, I interrupted.
No, please keep interrupting.
Wonderful.
This is nice. This is what we want. This is precisely what we want.
The art speaks about the culture, the traditional knowledge systems, the folklore. Now we have the biodiversity registers which are doing this work only. So you have a very important role to play, and that pictorial presentations make a lot of impact on everyone. One picture speaks 1,000 words. So that is something great which you're talking of. And even all the art forms. Thank you.
Very much so. In any case, please keep putting your thoughts on the table. It's quite important. I, for one, I studied at high school. Biology was my favorite, and art was my second. It's a very, very rare combination, together with sports and geography. But I did that, and I'm missing the arts a lot, and that's why I like putting to these events. Today, we didn't do that very much, except for we are in the elephant room where you see a lot of elephant art.
Yes.
But I like to put to events music. We have invited the singer-songwriter Charlie Winston from Marseille in France. He's an Englishman who lives over there, to support our events, and he did that a lot. So you are encouraged to identify maybe Indian musicians. We have also produced an art sculpture on plastic waste in Bangkok. and other forms. We also invited poets to our meetings. It makes it much more attractive. But for a little meeting like this one here, where we have 40, 50 people participating, it's too much of an effort to do it. But if we want to have 500 or 5,000 people participating online, then we can most certainly do that. And your thoughts and suggestions, they will be heard from us. Very much so, because we know since we had this overwhelming number of events going on since the lockdown in February 2020, March 2020, and how boring can these meetings be? You must put art to it. It's a must. So we will support that very much, and we count on your ideas. We will organize a special seminar on the Seven Sisters in Northeast India with some embassies. Maybe then we can already put some art to it one way or the other. We will have another seminar, not here in New Delhi, but in Dhaka on Sundarbans with Indian specialists and with Bangladeshi specialists, and maybe also with some international. We will also have a seminar with the UNESCO Regional Center of Biotechnology, which is 90 minutes outside New Delhi. We will have a discussion on biotechnology solutions for air pollution, to reduce the air pollution in New Delhi, because this is just, it's for me, it's just laughable what's going on. I find it very, very strange that 35 million people living in a city are accepting that their human rights to breathe clean air is being violated on a daily basis. I find it very strange. SDG, there are 17s. There is no SDG on air. The air is being mentioned in the targets of the other SDGs. I think this is something where the SDG designers have forgotten something. I think there should be an SDG on clean air. There's one on water, there's one on food. But food, we can live without food for 3 weeks. We can live without water for 3 days. We can live without clean air for 3 minutes. So this is how important that is. Of course, we will brace together to establish in India, maybe in a year from now. A year is not that much time, really, but it gives us enough time to organize the South and Central Asian Biosphere Reserve networking meeting in India. And again, all of your suggestions will be listened to, in particular your suggestion with ocean and blue carbon, and your suggestion with art, because that is an event that we try to make a little bit bigger, and we have to have poetry and art and music involved. Somebody was talking about maps. What was that? Somebody was talking about maps, good maps. Maps in Biosphere Reserve. Maybe it was our colleague from Addis Ababa. Biosphere reserves, of course, they need to have good maps. It's very, very important to the mapping of the core areas, the buffer zones, the transition zones. And they should also have good maps, like when we came to you first from Kanna and Perch, the colleagues who presented that. They presented really good maps for these new biosphere reserves coming up in India. In any case, colleagues, lunch is waiting for us. Thank you very much for our guests online. You need to eat your lunch without us.
There's a hand that's raised.
Oh, there are comments, sorry. Yes, there's a hand raised. Please give the floor to the colleague online, please. I'm sorry that I ignored that until now. My apologies.
Please unmute yourself and...
Mr. Ferreira, can you switch on your microphone, please, and then speak to us?
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. I'm happy to participate this online conference, especially the first day of Biosphere Reserve. Thank you all Indian participants, first of all. In Ethiopia, I have 5 biosphere reserves that is already Liana is presented. My rise idea is how we collaborate this biosphere reserve with Indian and other African biosphere network, because a lot of biosphere is currently, it is already from the 5 biosphere in our countries, it is 2 biosphere is not still past 10-year review. That is, revision of the time is, the maximum rate is 10 years, but it's almost 12 years past. So it is a great financial challenge how we solve this like of problem and how to sustain our biosphere reserve. So our network is very, very slow. That is not conducted with UNESCO, is periodically not reviewed. And there is no any finance. There is no also the management structure in biosphere it's weak. Sometimes it's managed by NGO. Sometimes it is non-government. There is no structure from the government to the local. So this is a great problem. So if we can collaborate with Indian, share your experience.
Yes, that's what Dr. Benno has mentioned about the South-South cooperation. We are definitely working on that. I mean, we are also going to be discussing with the Government of India, and I think our director in the Ministry of Environment has also shown a lot of enthusiasm in this idea, but it will require a bit of deliberations how the mechanism will work. So the UNESCO cluster office in India, the Maritime Research Center, and the Government of India through the Ministry of Environment and Forest is going to be discussing the mechanism, the details, how it will be done. And we are definitely committed to it. All of us will look at how it will be done is something which we cannot tell you right now because we are still on the table to discuss. But definitely this is being discussed and being considered.
So thank you very much, Mr. Ferreira, for your intervention. And we understand that it's an intervention that is being done quite frequently. Now, in order to understand that, a UNESCO Biosphere Reserve is not a project where you get after a lot of work, you get the Biosphere Reserve listed, and then you say, okay, great, now we have a Biosphere Reserve. Once the Biosphere Reserve is listed and established, that's where the bulk of the work will start. It's a process. It's a very long-term process. What we are trying to do in this Indian and Ethiopian South-South cooperation, Dr. Das will travel to Ethiopia sometime next year. I will travel to Ethiopia sometime next year. And we will then discuss what steps can we finance from UNESCO? What steps can we co-finance maybe from other UN agencies or interested embassies, foundations, private sector? For the start with, we have already invited this time the Ethiopian participation in this meeting. And we will have another meeting coming up this month on wetland ecosystems in India, Bangladesh, Bhutan, Nepal, and Sri Lanka. And we have actually invited from the UNESCO Ethiopian Category 2 Center, the Regional Center for Ecohydrology. We have invited Dr. Johannes Zerihun to come here to India and talk about the Ethiopian experience on ecohydrology management. And when we have the South Asian, Central Asian Biosphere Reserve networking meeting coming up probably in Chennai on the 3rd of November 2023, we will invite from Africa, Ethiopian specialists, Kenyan specialists, and Zimbabwean specialists, and maybe from some other countries. And we also will invite the private sector. And the private sector has to play a role, and money cannot only come to be invested into biosphere reserves. Biosphere reserves also have to learn how to make money through the activities that they are doing inside those biosphere reserves. In any case, thank you very much, everybody. And unfortunately, we don't have more time for any more intervention, but I think from what I can tell, people have a smile on their face. They probably like this short intervention today. And we will continue this process. Also, one more time, thank you very, very much, Rita and Samuel and Lillian, for your contributions and interventions from Ethiopia, which is very, very much appreciated. Thank you, colleagues, and goodbye.
Thank you. You may say thank you.
Thank you.
You're supposed to be doing the vote of thanks. So,
I thought you wanted me to close.
Half a minute from her.
Of course, I'm so sorry.
Half a minute.
Thank you. It's been a great afternoon for me. I think it's the same for everyone as well. So on behalf of the Maritime Research Center, which is a technology-driven think tank based in Pune, Maharashtra, I would like to thank each one of you for joining us for commemorating the first International Biosphere Reserves Day. We at MRC are glad that we could collaborate with UNESCO for celebrating the first ever International Day of Biosphere Reserves. We hope that it provides a wake-up call for the world on the importance of caring for the environment and achieving a balance between human activities and conservation of natural resources. MRC, as Dr. Das has mentioned in his presentation today, is dedicated towards the promotion of underwater domain awareness framework. MRC has drafted a comprehensive framework towards UDA that has been wholeheartedly embraced by key stakeholders for driving discourse and affirmative actions. Niti Aayog, which is Government of India's think tank, has considered the UDA framework prepared by us for national policy formulation. And over the years, MRC has emerged as a platform of national and regional significance. We are glad to inform, and as it has been discussed in this meeting as well, that significant steps have been undertaken by MRC and UNESCO post the conference that was held in this building on August 19, 2022. One of the significant steps that have been initiated is the plan to develop a center of excellence that would focus on coastal, marine, and freshwater socioecology and underwater heritage. We are grateful to UNESCO for coming forward and collaborating with us on the same subject. Thank you, Mr. Benoboy, for your welcome remark and for summing up the session very kindly for all of us. I remember what Mr. Benoboy had mentioned during the previous conference, which was held here in August. He quoted a study from Fiji University from the Netherlands, which stated that nanoplastics have entered the human bloodstream. And if that is not a wake-up call, then what is a wake-up call? I want to thank Dr. Neha Midha, who's the program officer at Natural Sciences at UNESCO, for her illustrious presentation on biosphere reserves. I would also like to thank her for coordinating with the comms and advocacy team at MRC and making the process holding the seminar very smooth for all of us. I'd like to thank Dr. Swayam Prabha Das for her illustrious presentation on the biodiversity challenges and opportunities in tropical waters. Besides, I would also like to thank Mr. Bharat Singh, who is from the ministry. Thank you, sir, for your presentation and for sharing your valuable inputs with us. I'd also like to thank Dr. Arnab, sir, for bringing everyone together and for holding a very fruitful conversation. Last but not the least, I would like to thank the supporting staff for their kind assistance in technical and logistical aspects, and to the audience who has joined us online. Thank you and have a nice day.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everybody online. Thank you so much.